I have something for you to watch. And as you're watching it, please stay tuned, because as soon as it's over, I have an invitation for you that I think you're going to find important. So stay on, because we've got something significant for you to see. Joseph Bias. Joseph, I know you were born in Savannah, Georgia, in the Deep South. And
Yes.
You went up to Rochester, Eastman School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that people who are looking at what we're doing today may know you, because you've been a very significant person. You've been on TBN. You sang at Martin Luther King's funeral. You've had an operatic voice. You're now the minister of music of the First Methodist Church of Tulsa. But the story that captivates me is back there in the beginning when you were in training. And as I understand, you felt something wasn't working right in your lungs.
Yeah, I was actually I was in a voice lesson. I was studying voice. It was a part of my degree program at the Eastman School of Music, and I was a graduate student. And my teacher was Julius Heumann, and who was a famous Metropolitan Opera bass baritone.
Yes.
And I was having difficulty breathing. I could sing a phrase up to a point, but then I would have to catch my breath. And this was kind of progressive. It didn't start out that way, but about midway through the first semester I was there, actually it was second year, he said, well, we need to get that checked out, you know. So I went to a doctor, and they did some allergy tests and all sorts of things, and they wanted to do one other thing, which was an x-ray. They did the x-ray, and they discovered that I had what they called some unusual markings on one of my lungs. And so in order to diagnose that further, I had to undergo a biopsy. And the biopsy was supposed to be a routine exploratory operation. And but when I was on the operating table, I started to suffocate. And so they introduced the tube down my throat to help me breathe. And that tube accidentally severed my right vocal cord. And as a result,
when you say severed it, you
cut
mean
it in half.
It cut it in two?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And later, several days later, when I was still in the hospital, unable to speak, unable to talk or make sound, that's when I found out what had happened. And they told me there was no medical way of repairing the damage. And if back then, if they could repair it, there would be significant scar tissue, so I would never be able to really sing or talk again.
So you looked at losing the ability to communicate vocally as well as sing.
Exactly.
Your career was ruined at that
Virtually
point.
over, yeah, by that diagnosis. And the two doctors, Dr. John Condemi and Dr. Walter J. Porres, were the ones who were working with me through this process. And they wanted to put in a voice box, you know, so that I would be able to at least communicate to some extent. And you know, sometimes you'll hear something and the news will be so devastating or just so wild, you don't really take it in. You sort of hear it, but you don't internalize it.
Yes.
And that's kind of what happened with me. I mean, I heard what they were saying, and I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. I was thinking I'd rather just write everything I want to communicate. I mean, it was what, 20-something, so I didn't have a sense of long-term life experience and what that was going to mean for me. So I just said, no, I don't think I want to do that. So I did what was probably the most practical thing to do. I changed my area of concentration from performance to musicology, because I knew I wanted to be in music. I knew that was on my heart. I wanted to be connected and surrounded and involved with music. And in the meantime, I decided, I communicated with people by writing everything. I kept a pencil and a pad with me all the time, and so we'd be in conversation with people sitting around a table, and they would talk, I would write and communicate. And this went on for several months. And but during that time, in fact, going back, while I was in the hospital, there were these two ladies from the Presbyterian church where I was a soloist at the time, there in Rochester. They would come by the hospital and they would stand at the foot of my bed and they would pray. And I thought they were praying in a foreign language because that was their native language. I found out many years later they were praying in the Spirit.
So they were praying in a language that you had
I had no idea.
Did they reach out or anything with their hands?
Yeah, I mean, they would pray for me. Sometimes they'd lay hands on me, but it was very subtle. It wasn't anything weird.
Yes.
I didn't think it was weird. I was just grateful for them and appreciative that they came by and did that. Months went by, and it had been my practice to, when I was shaving in the morning, early in the morning, to vocalize a little bit, get my voice started, warmed up for the day. And so on this particular day, I was standing before the mirror and I was beginning to shave, and I had forgotten that I couldn't sing. And so I didn't think about it, and I just started, and I heard myself make sound for the first time in months, and it excited me, and I kept going a little bit louder and a little bit more just to test it out to see what was happening. And suddenly I was singing, and then I started talking, and then I got excited. And have you ever been so excited about something you just turn around in the middle of the room, you don't know where to go, you're going here, you're going there? Well, I wanted to call my parents, I wanted to call my teacher, I wanted to call some people, and I kept heading in one direction or another. And I finally got focused enough to call home and call my mom and dad and tell them what had happened. And my mom, I love her. She was such a practical, pragmatic person. You know. Nothing ever excited her too much. She just was sort of like, well, that's nice, son. I'm so glad. Here I was. I'm climbing the walls. I'm just so excited. Anyway, she was pleased. I mean, she and my dad were both excited, but in their own way, they were expressing it. But the doctors afterwards, they called it an unexplained medical phenomena. I called it a miracle of God, because that's exactly what it was. They discovered over weeks of examining me, that using the laryngoscope and looking down into my throat, that there was no scar tissue.
No scar tissue?
No scar tissue.
That's impossible.
That's impossible. It just doesn't happen, but there is no scar tissue. And so I started singing again, and I returned to vocal music and to performance, and that's what I got my degree in.
And your voice came back in all of its resonance and fullness?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's never had a problem since?
Never wavered at all since.
And so, in a sense, that was the beginning of the way in which God touched your life.
Yeah, in many ways, yeah.
And it's a miracle that to this very hour you can talk and sing and
see, the thing I think about most when I think about what happened to me was I grew up Baptist with very loving Christian parents and a community of Christians around me, and in church all the time and that sort of thing. So I had a foundation of faith in Jesus Christ. But I did not have what you would call a passionate sense of the presence of God in an immediate way in my life all the time.
Yes.
And I certainly knew nothing about supernatural miracles. I know people prayed for people all the time, but there was little expectation that anything was going to change that much. Life had its inevitable pattern and course, and it just stayed on that. That was my thinking before this happened to me. But when this happened to me, it disturbed all of that. I had to rethink, miracles.
Yes.
I had to rethink healing. I had to rethink God's immediate care for me as a person.
Because you knew now.
I knew now that something had happened, and it was very real. It was very measurable. It was tangible.
Oh. Well, I hope the people who are listening to us today, Joseph, can grasp how important and significant it is in ways that are unexpected and that come out of the clear blue and change our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this with us. This is an important story, and we trust the people listening to us will receive the blessing as you received the blessing. Thank
That's
you.
my prayer.
I hope you found what you just saw to be inspirational, be encouragement to you. And I'd like to hear from you. Please write me at Miracles Never Cease, Box 2, Bethany, Oklahoma, 73008.